Despite all his success, however, the old restlessness returned. He needed a new venture, a bigger challenge, and soon he found it. The Walt Disney Company had plans to create a new theme park in Europe. The last one to open, Tokyo Disneyland in 1983, had been a success. Those in charge of theme park had settled upon two potential sites for the new Disneyland. One near Barcelona, Spain, the other near Paris. Although the Barcelona site made more economic sense since the weather there was much better, Eisner chose the French site. This was going to be more than a theme park. This was going to be a cultural statement. He would hire the best architect in the world, unlike the unlike the usual fiberglass castless at the other theme park at Euro Disney. As it came to be known, the castle would be built out of pink stone and with a handcrafted stained glass windows with scenes from various fairy tales. It would be a place even snobby French elites would be excited to visit. Eisner loved architecture, and here he could be a modern day Medici. As the year went by, the cost of Euro Disney mounted, letting go of his usual obsession with the bottom line. Eisner felt that if he built it right, the crowd would come and the park would eventually pay for it. But when it finally opened as planned in 1992, it quickly became clear that Eisner had not understood French taste and vacation habit. The French were not so willing to wait in line for rides, particularly in bad weather, as in the other theme park. No beer or wine was served on the premises, and that seemed like sacrilege to the French. The hotel room were too expensive for a family to stay there more than a night, and despite all the attention to detail, the pink stone the pink stone castle still looked like its version of the original. Attention was only half of what Eisner had anticipated. The depths Disney had incurred in the constructions had ballooned, and the money coming in from visitors could not even service the interest on them. It was shaping up to be a disaster, the first ever in his glorious career. As he finally came to terms with this reality, he decided that Frankel was to blame. It was his job to observe the financial health of the project, and he had failed. Whereas before, Eisner had only had the best thing to say about their working relationship. Now he often complained about his second in command and contemplated firing him. In the middle of his growing debacle, Eisner felt a new threat on the horizon. Jeffrey Katzenberg, he had once referred to Katzenberg as his golden retriever, so loyal and hardworking. It was Katzenberg who had overseen the string of early hits for the studio, including the biggest hit of all, Beauty and the Beast, the film that had initiated the renaissance of Disney's animations department. But something about Katzenberg but something about Katzenberg but something about Katzenberg was making him increasingly nervous. Well, it was the memo that Katzenberg had written in 1990, in which he dissected the string of flop Disney had recently produced in live action. Since 1984, we have slowly drifted away from our original vision of how to run a business. He wrote Katzenberg criticized the studio decision to go for bigger budget films such as Tracy. Trying to make even movies, Disney had fallen for the blockbuster mentality and had lost its soul in this process. The memo made Eisner uncomfortable. Dick Tracy was Eisner's own pet project. Was Katzenberg indirectly criticizing his boss? When he thought about it, It seems like this was a clear imitation of his own infamous memo at Paramount, in which he had advocated for less expensive, high concept films. Now it occurred to him that Katzenberg saw himself as the next Eisner. Maybe he was angling to take Eisner's job. To subtly undermine his authority, this began to eat away at him. Why was Katzenberg now cutting him out of story meeting? The animation department soon became the primary generator of profit for the studio. With new hits such as Aladdin and now The Lion King, which had been Katzenberg's baby, he had come up with the story's idea and developed it from start to finish. Magazine articles now began to feature Katzenberg as if he were the creative genius behind Disney's resurgence in the genre. About what Roy Disney, the vice chairman of animation? What about Eisner himself, who was in charge of everything? To Eisner, Katzenberg was now playing the media, building himself up. An executive had reported to Eisner that Katzenberg was going around saying, "I'm the Walt Disney of today." Suspicion soon turned into hatred. Eisner could not stand to be around him. Then, in March of 1994, Frank Wells killed in a helicopter accident while on a skiing trip. To Treasure shareholders and Wall Street, Eisner soon announced that he would take over all Wells' position as president. But suddenly here was Katzenberg pestering him with phone calls and memos reminding Eisner that he had promised him the president job if Wells ever left the company. How insensitive! So sooner after the tragedy, he stopped returning Katzenberg phone calls. Hi Anton. Hi Kathleen. Hello Anand. How are you? Finally, in August 1994, Eisner fired Jeffrey Katzenberg, shocking almost everyone in Hollywood. He had fired the most successful studio executive in town. The Lion King had become one of the most profitable films in Hollywood history. It was Katzenberg who was behind Disney acquisition of Miramax, considered a great coup with the ensuing success of Pulp Fiction. It seemed like madness on his part, but Eisner did not care. Finally, freed of Katzenberg's shadow, he could relax and now take Disney to the next level on his own and with no more distraction. To prove he had not lost his touch, he soon dazzled the entertainment world by engineering Disney purchase of ABC. The sheer audacity of this coup once again made him the center of attraction. Now he was forging an entertainment empire beyond what anyone had ever attempted or imagined. This move, however, created a problem for him. The company had virtually doubled in size. It was too complex, too big for one man. Only a year earlier, he had undergone open heart surgery and he could not handle the added stress. He needed another Frank Wells, and his thoughts soon turned to his old friend Mikhail. Mikhail Ovitz, one of the founder and he had of creative artist agencies. Ovitz was the greatest deal maker in Hollywood history, perhaps the most powerful man in town. Together they could dominate the field. Many within the business warned him against this hire. Ovitz was not like Frank Wells. He was not a finance guy or a master of detail, as Ovitz himself would have admitted. Eisner ignored such advice. People were being too conventional in their thinking. He decided to lure Ovids away from CA with a very lucrative package and uh, offer him the title of president. He assured Ovids in several discussions that although Ovids would be second in command, they could they would eventually run the company as co-leaders. In a phone call, Ovids finally agreed to all of the terms. But the moment Eisner hung up, he realized he had made the biggest mistake of his life. What had he been thinking? They might have been the closest of friends. But how would two such larger than life men ever be able to work together? Ovitz was power hungry. This would be the Katzenberg problems times two. It was too late. However, he had gotten the board's approval for the hire. His own reputation, his decision making process as a CEO was at stake. He would have to make it work. He quickly decided upon a strategy. He would narrow its responsibilities, keep a tight leash on him, and make him prove himself as president. By doing so, Witz could early Eisner trust and get more power. From day one, Eisner wanted to signal to Witz who was boss. Instead of moving him into Frank Wells' old office on the sixth floor at Disney headquarters, next to Eisner, Eisner put him in a rather unimpressive office of the fifth floor. Overs liked to spread money around with gifts and lavish party to charm people. Eisner had his team monitor every penny that Overs spent on such things and watch his every move. Was Overs contracting other executive behind Eisner back? He would not nurture another Katzenberg at his breast. Soon the following dynamic developed. Overs would approach him with some potential deal, and Eisner would not discourage him from exploring it. But once it came time to agree to the deal. Eisner would give a firm no. Slowly it would spread through the industry that Ovitz had lost his touch and could no longer close a deal. Ovitz began to panic. He wanted desperately to prove he had been worthy of the choice. He offered to move to New York to help manage ABC since the merger of the two companies was not working out so smoothly. But Eisner said no. He told his lieutenants to keep their distance from Ovitz. He was not a man to be trusted. He was the son of a liquor salesman in the Fernando Valley, and like his father, Ovitz was just a smooth salesman. He was addicted to attention from the media. Within the company, Ovitz had become completely isolated. As the months dragged on in this saga, saga, Ovitz could see what was happening, and he complained bitterly to Eisner. He had left his exit for Disney. He had staked his reputation on what he would do as president. He had staked his reputation on what he would do as president, and Eisner was destroying his reputation. Nobody respected him any longer in this business. Eisner treatment of Ovitz was downright sadistic. In Eisner's mind, however, Ovitz had failed the test he had laid out. He had not proven himself to be patient. He had not proven himself to be patient. He was no Frank Wells in December of 1996. After a mere 14 months on the job, Ovitz was fired, taking with him an enormous severance package. It was a dizzying and rapid fall from grace. Finally, liberated from this great mistake, Eisner began to consolidate the power within the company. ABC was not doing so well. He would have to intervene and take some control. He would have to intervene and take some control. He began to attend programming meeting. He began to attend programming meeting. He talked of his own golden days at ABC and of the great shows he had created there, such as Labyrinth and Surly and Happy Days. ABC needed to go back to that early philosophy and create high concept show for the family. As the internet began to take off, Eisenhower had to get involved in a big way. He next He next the purchase of Yahoo. Pushed by his executive, instead Disney would start its own internal portal called Go. Over the years, he had learned the lesson. It was always best to design and run your own show. Disney would dominate the internet. He had proven himself a turnaround genius twice before, and with Disney now in a slump, he would he would do it a third time. Yes, you're almost right. Didi. Disneyland is also famous, na? Especially for the kids. Every kid, Disneyland is a dream to go there. Mine also. So I feel good to read about Disney. It is glorified theme park, yes. I saw on television. However, a wave of disaster hit the corporation, one after another. After being fired, Katzenberg had sued Disney for the bonus based on performance. He was due under his contract. When he had been president, Ovitz had tried to settle the suit before it went to court and had gotten Katzenberg to agree to $19 million. But at the last minute, Eisner had nixed this, certain he did not owe Katzenberg anything. In 2001, the judge ruled in Katzenberg favor, and they had to settle for a whopping $280 million. Disney had poured vast resources into the creation of Go, and it was a terrific flop that had to be shut down. The cost from Euro Disney was still bleeding the company. Disney had a partnership with Pixar, and together they had produced such hit as Toy Story. But now the CEO of Pixar, Steve Jobs, made it clear he would never work with Disney again. Deeply resenting Eisner micromanaging, ABC was underperforming. Most of the movies Disney produced were not flop but expensive flops, culminating in the biggest one of all, Pearl Harbor, which opened in May of 2001. Suddenly, it seemed that Roy Disney had lost faith in Eisner. The stock price was plummeting. He told Eisner it would be best for him to resign. In, grat- uh, what in gratitude, what hubris. But hubris, Eisner was a man who had single-handedly brought the company back from the dead. He had saved Roy from disaster and made him a fortune. Roy, who had been considered a world idiot nephew, and now in Eisener's darkest hour, Roy was going to betray him. Eisner had never felt more enraged. He quickly struck back, forcing Roy to resign from the board. This only seemed to embolden Roy. He organized a shareholder revolt known as Save Disney, and in March of 2004, the shareholder voted a stinging rebuke of Eisner leadership. Soon, the board decided to strip Eisner of his position as chairman of the board. The empire he had forged was falling apart. In September of 2005, with hardly an ally to lean on and feeling alone and betrayed, Eisner officially resigned from Disney. How had it all unraveled so quickly? They would come to miss him, he told friends, and he meant all of Hollywood. There would never be another like him. I'm not a Turkish woman. I'm an Indian. किसना फेल हो जाएंगे ठीक है फेल होने के लिए ही पढ़ रहा हूँ interpretation. We can say that a certain point um, in his career, we can say that a certain point in his career, Michael Eisner succumbed, succumbed to form of delusion when it came to power. His thinking divorced from reality that he made business decision within disastrous consequences. Let us follow the process of his particular form of delusion as it emerged and look over his mind. At the beginning of his career at ABC, young Eisner had a solid grasp on reality. He was fiercely practical. He understood and exploited to the maximum his strength, his ambitious and competitive nature, his intense work ethic, his keen sense for the entertainment test of the average American. Um, Eisner had a quick mind and the ability to encourage others to think creatively. Leaning on this strength, he rose quickly up the ladder. He possessed a high degree of confidence in his talent, and the series of promotions he received at ABC confirmed this self opinion. He could afford to be a little cocky because he had learned a lot on the job and his skill as a programmer had improved immensely. He was on a fast track toward the top, which he reached at the age of 34 by being named head of primetime programming at ABC. As a person of high ambition, he soon felt that the world of television was somewhat constricting. As a person of high ambition, he soon felt that the world of television was somewhat constricting. There were limits to the kinds of entertainment he could program. The film would offer something looser, greater, and more glamorous. It was natural then for him to accept the position at Paramount. But at Paramount, something occurred that began the subtle process of the unbalancing of his mind because the stage was bigger and he was the head of the studio. He began to receive attention from the media and the public. He was featured on the cover of magazine as the hottest film executive in Hollywood. This was quality, qualitatively different from the attention and the satisfaction that had come from the promotion at ABC. Now he had millions of people admiring him. How could their opinion be wrong? To them, he was a genius, a new kind of hero altering the landscape of the studio system. This was intoxicating. He inevitably elevated his estimation of his skills, but it came with a great danger. The success that Eisner had at Paramount was not completely of his own doing. When he had arrived at the studio, several films were already in pre-production, including Saturday Night Fever, which would mark the turnaround. Barry Diller was the perfect foil to Eisner. He would argue with him endlessly about his idea, forcing Eisner to sharpen them, but puffed up by the attention he was receiving. Eisner had to imagine that he deserved the accolades he received strictly for his own effort, and so naturally he subtracted from his success that element of good timing and the contributions of others. Now his mind was subtly divorcing itself from reality. Instead of rigorously focusing on the audience and how to entertain people, he started to increasingly focus believing in the myth of his greatness as promulgated by others. He imagined he had the golden touch. Have you seen Pearl Harbor? No, I never seen Pearl Harbor. No, I think this is the first time I read about it. Why? You saw them? You saw him? At Disney, the pattern repeated and grew more intense. He basked in the glow of his amazing success there, quickly forgetting the incredible good luck he had in inheriting the Disney library at the time of explosion of home video and family entertainment. He discounted the critical role that wealth had played in balancing him out. With his sense of grandeur growing, he faced a dilemma. He had become addicted to the attention that came from creating a splash, doing something big. He could not content himself with simple success and rising profit. He had to add to the myth to keep it alive. Euro Disney would be the answer. He would show the world he was not just a corporate executive, but rather a Renaissance man. In building the park, he refused to listen to experienced advisor who recommended the Barcelona site and advocated a modest theme park to keep the cost down. He did not pay attention to French culture but directed everything from Burbank. He operated under the belief that his skill as the head of a film studio could be transferred to the theme park and architecture. He was suddenly overestimating his creative power, and now his business decision revealed a large enough detachment from reality to qualify as delusion. Once this mental imbalance takes hold, it can only get worse because to come back down to earth is to admit that one early high self opinion was wrong, and the human animal will almost never admit that. Instead, the tendency is to blame others for every failure or setback. In the grip now of his delusion, he made his most serious mistake of all, the firing of Jeffrey Katzenberg. The Disney system depended on a steady flow of new animated hits. which fed the stores and theme park with new characters, merchandise, rides, and adventure and avenues for publicity. Katzenberg clearly had developed the knack for creating such hits, exemplified by the unprecedented success of The Lion King, firing him but the entire assembly line at risk. Who would take over? Certainly not Roy Disney or Eisen himself. Furthermore, he had to know that that Katzenberg would take his skills elsewhere, which he which he did when he confused a new studio. Hmm. Which he did when he confounded a new studio. DreamWorks, there is churned out more animated hits. The new studio drove up the price for a skilled animator, vastly increasing the cost of producing an animated film and threatening Disney's entire profit system. But instead of firm grip on this reality, Eisner was more focused on the competition for attention. Katzenberg's rise threatened his elevated self-opinion, and he had to sacrifice profit and practicality to soothe his ego. The downward spiral had begun. The acquisition of ABC under the belief that bigger is better revealed his growing detachment from reality. Television was dying business model in the age of new media. Television was a dying business model in the age of new media. It was not a realistic business reason but a play for publicity. He had created an mm, entertainment behemoth, 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 a blob without any clear identity. The hiring and firing of Ovid's the hiring and firing of uh, the hiring and firing of Ovid's revealed an even greater level of delusion. People had become more instrument for Eisner to use. Ovid was considered the most feared and powerful man in Hollywood. Perhaps Eisner was unconsciously driven by the desire to humiliate Ovid. If he had the power to make Ovid's beg for crumbs, if he had the power to make Ovid's beg for crumbs, he must be the most powerful man in Hollywood. Soon all the problem that stemmed from his delusional thought process began to cascade. The continually rising cost of Euro Disney, the Katzenberg's bonus, the lack of hits in both film division, the continual drain on resources from ABC, the Ovid severance package, the board member could no longer ignore the falling stock price. The firing of Katzenberg and Ovid made Eisner the most hated man in Hollywood, and as his fortune fell, all of his enemies came out of the woodwork. As Heston his The firing of Katzenberg and Ovid made Eisner the most hated man in Hollywood, and as his fortunes fell, all of his enemies came out of the woodwork to hasten his destruction. His fall from power was fast and spectacular. Understand, the story of Michael Eisner is much closer to you than you think. His fate could easily be yours, albeit most likely on a small scale. The reason is simple. We humans possess a weakness that is latent in us all and will push us into the delusion process without our ever being aware of the dynamic. The weakness stems from our natural tendency to overestimate our skills. We normally have a self opinion that is somewhat elevated in relation to reality. We have a deep need to feel ourselves superior to others in something: intelligence, beauty, charm, popularity, or saintliness. This can be a positive. A degree of confidence impels us to take on challenge, to push past our supposed limits, and to learn in the process. But once we experience success on any level, increase attention from an individual or group, a promotion, funding for a project, that confidence will tend to rise too quickly, and there will be an ever growing discrepancy between our self opinion and reality. how Disney related to the World War? I don't understand this. Can you explain it? Behemoth is a large beast. Oh, thank you. Large beast. Hi Vittal, कैसे हो आप? हाँ, आधी बाकी है. Any success that we have in life inevitably depend on some good luck, timing, the contribution of others, the teachers who helped us along the way, the whims of public in needs, the whims of public in needs of something new. Our tendency is to forget all of this and imagine that any success stems from our superior self. Our tendency is to forget all of this and imagine that any success stems from our superior self. We begin to assume we can handle new challenges well before we are ready. After all, people have confirmed our greatness with their attention. And we want to keep it coming. We imagine we have the golden touch and that we can now magically transfer our skill to some other medium or field. Without realizing it, we become more attuned to our ego and our fantasies that to the people we work for and our audience. We grow distance from those who are helping. We grow distance from those who are helping us, seeing them as tool to be used. Yeah. We grow distance from those who are helping us, seeing them as tool to be used. And with any failure that occur, we tend to blame others. Success has an irresistible pull to it that tends to cloud our mind. Your task is the following. After any kind of success, analyze the components, seek the element of luck that is inevitably there, as well as the role that other people, including mentors, played in your good fortune. This will neutralize the tendency to inflate your power. Remind yourself that with success comes complacency as attention become more important than the work and old strategies are repeated. With success, you must raise your vigilance, wipe the slate clean with each new project. Starting from zero, try to pay less attention to the applause as it grows louder. Seize the limit to what you can accomplish and embrace them working with what you have. Don't believe bigger is better. Consolidating and concentrating your focus is often the wiser choice. Be wary of offending with your growing sense of superiority. You will need your allies. Compensate for the drug like effect of success by keeping your feet planted firmly on the ground. The power you will build up in this slow and organic way will be more real and lasting. Remember, now, the power you will build up in this slow and organic way will be more real and lasting. Remember, the gods are merciless with those who fly too high on the wings of grandiosity, and they will make you pay the price. Those who fly too high on the wings of grandiosity, and they will make you pay the price. Existence alone had never been enough for him. He had always wanted more. But it was only from the force of his desire that he had regarded himself as a man to whom more was permitted than to others. Fyodor Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment. सुबह हम लेट उठते हैं तो सुबह उतना नहीं पढ़ पाएंगे. Hmm. Oh, understood. What is the meaning of nuking? Oh, I got it. You explain, you know what? That you have a talent to explain each and every sentence. It's too good. Like a teacher, you explain everything in a detailed way so that it's become easier to understand. Thank you. Keys to human nature. Let us say that you have a project to realize, or an individual or group of people you wish to pursue to do something. Let us say that you have a project to realize, or an individual or group of people you wish to persuade to do something. We could describe a realistic attitude toward reaching such goals in the following way. Getting what you want is rarely easy. Success will depend on a lot of effort and some luck. To make your project work, you will probably have to jettison your previous strategy. Circumstances are always changing and you need to keep an open mind. The people you are trying to reach never respond exactly as you might have imagined or hoped. In fact, people will generally surprise and frustrate you in their reaction. They have their own need, experiences, and particular psychology that are different from your own. To impress your target, you will have to focus on them and their spirit. If you fail to accomplish what you want, you will have to examine carefully what you did wrong and strive to learn from the experience. You can think of the project or task ahead of you as a block of marble you must sculpt into something precise and beautiful. The block is much larger than you, and the material is quite resistant. But the task is not impossible. But the task is not impossible with enough effort, focus, and resilience. You can slowly crave it into what you need. You must begin, however, with a proper sense of proportion. Goals are hard to reach, people are resistant, and you have limit to what you can do. With such a realistic attitude, you can summon up the realistic patience and get to work. Imagine, however, that your brain has come to a psychological disease that affect your perceptions of size and proportion. Instead of seeing the task you are facing a rather large and the material resistance under the influence of this disease, you perceive the block of marble as relatively small and malleable. Losing your sense of proportion, you believe it won't take long to fasten the block into the image you have in your mind of the finished product. You imagine that people you are trying to reach are not naturally resistant but quite predictable. You know how they will respond to your great idea, respond how how they will respond to your great idea. They will love it. In fact, they need you and your work more than you need them. They should seek you out. The emphasis is not on what you need to do to succeed, but on what you feel you deserve. You can foresee a lot of attention coming your way with this project, but if you fail, other people must be to blame because you have gift your cause is the right one, and only those who are malicious or envious could stand in your way. We can call this psychological disease grandiosity. As you feel its effect, the normal realistic proportion are reversed. Yourself become larger. You can call this psychological disease grandiosity. As you feel its effects, the normal realistic proportion are reversed. Yourself become larger and greater than anything else around it. This is the lens through which you view the task and the people you need to reach. This is the lens through which you view the task and the people you need to reach. This is not merely deep narcissism in which everything must revolve around you. This is seeing yourself as enlarged. The root of the word grandiosity meaning big or great. This is not merely deep narcissism, yourself as enlarged. The root of the word grandiosity meaning big or great, as superior or worthy of not, in which everything must revolve around you. This is seeing yourself as enlarged, the root of the word grandiosity meaning big or great, as superior and worthy of not only attention but of being adored. It is a feeling of being not merely human but godlike. It is a feeling of being not merely human. It is a feeling of being not merely human but godlike. You may think of powerful, ego, egoistical leaders in the public eye as the ones who contract such a disease, but you would be very wrong in that assumption. Certainly, we find many influential people such as Michael Eisner with high grade vision of grandiosity, where the attention and accolades they receive create a more intense enlargement of the self. But there is a low grade, everyday version of the disease that is common to almost all of us because it is a trait embedded in human nature. It seems from our deep need to feel important, esteemed by people, and superior to other in something. You are really aware of your own grandiosity because, by its nature, it alters your perception of reality and makes it hard to have an accurate assessment of yourself. And so you are unaware of the problem it might be causing you at this very moment. Your low grade grandiosity. Your low grade grandiosity will cause you to overestimate your own risks, your own skills and ability, and to underestimate the obstacle that you face. And so you will take on tasks that are beyond your actual capacity. You will feel certain that people will respond to your idea in a particular way, and when they don't, you will become upset and blame others. You may become restless and suddenly make a career change, not realizing that grandiosity is at the root. Your present work is not confirming your greatness and superiority, because truly great would require more years of training and the development of new skills. Better to quit and be lured by the possibilities a new career offer, allowing you to entertain fantasies of greatness in this way. You never quite master anything. You may have dozens of great ideas that you never attempt to execute because that would cause you to do confront the reality of your actual skill level. Without being aware of it, you might become you might be ever so slightly passive. You expect other people to understand you, give you what you want, treat you well instead of earning their praise. You feel entitled to it. In all of these cases, your low grade grandiosity will prevent you from learning from your mistakes and developing yourself because you begin with the assumption that you are already large and great, and it is too difficult to admit otherwise. Difficult to admit otherwise. Your task as a student of human nature is threefold. First, you must understand the phenomenon of grandiosity itself, why it is so embedded in human nature, and why you will find many more grandiosities people in the world today than ever before. Second, you need to recognize the sign of grandiosity and know how to manage the people who display them. And third, and and most important, you must see the sign of the disease in yourself and learn not only how to control your grandiose tendency but also how to channel this energy into something productive. See, practical grandiosity. According to the renowned psychoanalyst Hein Kohut, in 1913 to 1981, grandiosity has its root in the earliest years of our life. In our first month, most of us bounded completely with our mother. We had no sense of separate identity. She met our even she met our she met our every need. We came to believe that the breast that gave us food was actually a part of ourselves. We were omnipotent. We all had to do was feel hungry or feel any need, and the mother was there to meet it, as if we had magical power to control her. But then slowly we had to go through a second phase of life in which we were forced to confront the reality. Our mother was a separate being who had other people to attend to. We were not omnipotent but rather weak, quite small and dependent. This realization was painful and the source of much of our acting out. We had a deep need to assert ourselves, to show we were not so helpless, and to fantasize about powers we did not possess. Children often imagine the ability to see through walls, to fly, or to read people's mind, and this is why they are drawn to stories or superheroes, to stories of superheroes. As we get older, we may not be physically small anymore. As we get older, we may not physically small anymore. But our sense of insignificance only get worse. We come to realize we are one person, not just in a large family, school or city, but in an entire globe filled with billions of people. Our life are relatively short. We have limited skills and brain power. There is so much we cannot control, particularly with our careers and global trends. The idea that we will die and be quickly forgotten, swallowed up in eternity, is quite intolerable. We want to feel significant in some way, to protest against our natural smallness, to expand our sense of self. What we experience at the age of 3 or 4 unconsciously haunt us our entire life. We alternate, we alternate between moment of sensing our smallness and trying to deny it. This makes us prone to finding ways to imagine our superiority. Some children do not go through the second phase in early childhood in which they must confront their relative smallness. And these children are more vulnerable to deeper form of grandiosity later in life. They are the pampered, spoiled ones. Some children do not go through the second phase in early childhood in which they must confront their relative smallness, and these children are more vulnerable to deeper form of grandiosity later in life. They are the Pampered, spoiled ones. The mother and the father continue to make her children feel like they are the center of the universe, shielding them from the pain of confronting the reality. Their every wish become a command if ever attempts are made to instill the slightest amount of discipline. The parents are met with a tantrum. Furthermore, such children come to disdain any form of authority compared with themselves and what they can get. The father figure seems rather weak. Oh, great. How many book you read till now? I think you are fond of books. Many you are a habit of reading books, no? By listening your opinion, I think you are that type. 100. Till now you read 100 books. How much time do you need to complete one book? Multiple hundred. Huh? All the books are based upon what? Not much. Usually a week or so. You completed a book in a week. Hey, how is this possible? At least to complete a book, it takes a 1 month or minimum 25 days. It's easy. Which type of book you read? हाँ, यहाँ पे tell which type of book do you read? If you read enough, it's predictable what the author is saying. All kind, all kind of book. Why you don't have a taste of your own? How one person read all kind of books? Means everyone have their taste and opinion, na? Like I have mine that I like autobiography and biography and about human natures. So that type I read fictional and non. Oh, like comic, na? I also read once, The Locked Door. It's all based upon a story. It that was a good book for sleep. After reading that book, I went to sleep. It's a good story. It's like a serial killer. At the time of buying that book, The Locked Door, I thought that that book is related to our life. That why some doors are closed for us. But after reading that book, I understood that is a totally story book, like serial killer. So it's a totally wastage of time for me. Okay. Religious book. Okay. Which one? Tell me the names of few ones. Okay, we talk about it tomorrow. So bye for today. See you tomorrow. Okay. Bye bye. Take care. That's all for today. Ta-ta.